Hi, Bernie. Good to know. How are you?
Porto, fine. How about yourself? Thank you for sending that lovely card. We just got it in the mail.
What?
Your card thanking us all for coming and making you feel comfortable in the neighborhood.
Yeah. You
I,
saw you saw Babette design the card?
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
She designed it. Come on here, Tammy. Babette Marciano, Wall Sisters. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They did it as a fundraiser for SAR. They
Uh-huh.
did Rosh Hashanah cards for Rosh Hashanah, and then they asked her to do just regular cards. So she did it, and yeah, they made a nice amount of money. It was nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I see it was SAR, yes.
Right.
Babette Marciano art. This. See?
Let me see.
What is that? What's Loto? The
Lotto? I don't know.
The
Oh,
logo.
Lotto is like the lottery in Israel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're right.
You
That's
know, they have those kiosks. They have those kiosks in Israel where people buy like lottery tickets.
Oh,
yeah, Babette designed it.
that's
Yeah, I was telling Bernie it was a fundraiser for SAR, the cards.
look very beautiful as always.
What?
You look
What?
beautiful as always.
Ugh, please.
You're charming her.
Yeah, I'm not. How's it going?
It's going okay. I have an appointment with the surgeon in February. Yeah.
And the one you used the last time?
No. It's Dr. Perry, a woman surgeon.
I heard
There's,
of her.
there's two of them, Dr. Perry and Dr. Tushman. They
Mm-hmm.
do it together. So we'll see. Yeah.
I hope that whatever you do goes well.
Me too. It's a long haul.
It's not easy.
I know. But it's not easy being like this either.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm still not there.
Yeah.
It's just about a year.
Really. How long did it take Esty?
A year.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully you'll be back to new soon.
I don't know if you can ever get back to being new.
But you're better than before.
Yeah, but I'm not good enough, you know.
Yeah.
I'm going to Israel like in 3 weeks, and I have to be able to manage better. I'm just having a problem with this nerve pain in my quad, you know. So I can't.
Where? Nerve in where?
Quadriceps.
The nerve pain in the front of the thigh, so I can't like do the exercises I need to do. So I'm having
Right.
a third epidural on Tuesday to try and block that pain.
Uh-huh. Okay, hopefully it'll help.
I hope so.
Hopefully.
Oh.
Yeah.
But were you taking that stuff for the osteoporosis?
Yeah.
How long have you taken it?
Yeah. I do that. No, I've been taking it. It's Prolia. You take a shot every 6 months. I've been doing it for 6 years now.
Really?
Yeah, and it helps. It helps. You could tell from the bone density scan. You can tell that it helps. Do you do it?
No, I don't need it. I don't have
Okay.
osteoporosis, but I need to go have a bone scan and a mammography. I always do that.
Okay.
So I hope you have enough bone density that you can
What's
have
up,
these
everybody?
Yeah.
Is Ernie here yet? It is Ernie.
Here we are.
Can you hear us? Ernie?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we
Yes.
hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, we left off Perek Chaf Aleph, Pasuk Yud Zayin,
Really good.
which Menashe Melech, the Rasha, we talked about. According to the mainstream opinion, he has no chelik l'olam haba. There was machlokas. He did do tshuva. He didn't do tshuva.
Menashe.
Menashe Melech, and Pasuk Yud Zayin v'yeser divrei Menashe v'chol asher asa v'chatasor shechata. The rest of the words of Menashe and what he did. Halohim ksuvim al sefer divrei yomim v'malchei Yehuda. For example, in Sefer Melachim, where Yirmiyahu Navi is the author, he only discussed the various averis of Menashe. He does not mention at all that he became about tshuva. And we said that perhaps the reason why Yirmiyahu did not write it here is because maybe the tshuva was not a tshuva shlema. And that since we said last week that the averis of Menashe led directly to the Churban Abayis, and his tshuva didn't help that, and Yirmiyahu Navi is the Navi who is the one that prophesies about the Churban, so he doesn't mention the tshuva. But
Ernie, is it also possible that maybe because they were saying that even though Menashe did tshuva, he could not influence the masses. He did such a good job that even when he was when he did tshuva, he could not bring back the fold. So that perhaps that could still in other words, his hate, lingered and did not impact on the klal.
right, and it's another reason why perhaps Yirmiyahu here in Melachim does not mention the tshuva. But I want to read the psukim in Divrei Yomim. It says, "Yeser Divrei Menashe utfiloso el Elokav." His tefillah, v'divrei chozim hamidabrim elav, b'shem Hashem Elokei Yisrael, the Nevi'im that spoke to him, utfilato v'hei aterlo, and sort of Hashem answering him. These are the psukim that seems to suggest that Menashe did do tshuva. Vayishkav Menashe avotav, pasuk Yud Ches, vayikaver began beito began Uzah, vayimloch Amon benot tachtov. His son Amon rules. Menashe was not buried with the other Malchei Yehuda. He was a Rasha. Perhaps Menashe himself requested not to be buried. Because remember, if he did tshuva, he was embarrassed, and therefore he asked not to be buried with his forefathers who were tzaddikim.
He committed offenses against God.
Now, other important psukim from Divrei Yomim. In Divrei Yomim, Pasuk Perek Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Yud Gimel, we said again, Vayispalel Elav, Hashem, Menashe davened to Hashem, Vaye'oser lo, Vayishmat Kinaso, Hashem listened to his davening. Vayishiveu Yerushalayim l'malchuso. Remember, Menashe was taken prisoner by the Babylonians, but through the davening, Hashem brought him back to Yerushalayim and to his kingdom. Vayedam Menashe ki Hashem Elokim. V'achrechein banach chomach yitzona li'ir David. He also strengthened the walls. And vayasar et Elohei nechar v'tasem Beit Hashem. He removed the idols in the Beis Hamikdash. V'chol hamizbachos asher bana b'har Beis Hashem Yerushalayim, and all the altars that he built to the Avodah Zarah. Vayiven es mizbeach Hashem v'yizbach alav zivchei shlamim v'todah. So he made it sounds like a very authentic tshuva.
But Ernie, can I just say something else? I went on ahead. He removed the idols, but he didn't destroy them. So they were accessible to his son later on. So if you really want to do a true tshuva, you want to destroy the idols and not have them accessible to anybody. He didn't do that. So removing, I don't know where he put them, but he didn't destroy them.
It says vayashlech chutza la'ir. He removed them and threw them out of the city. But yes, he didn't burn them, as we'll see later on another king will do. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Yud, tells us, I think we mentioned it last week, Amar of Levi, that when the Babylonian kings took him prisoner, Mulei Duchel Nechoshes Asula, they made like a cauldron of copper. V'nasnu osa b'socha, and they put him in it. Vayumasikim tachtav, and they were sort of boiling him. Kivan sharaat shetzarasot tzara, lo iniach avodah zarah ba'olam shlo iskira. So he davened to every avodah zarah in the world. Kivan shlohoya lo klum, amar zechorani shaya avi mikra utias hapasuk hazeh b'beis hakneses. He remembered that his father would read him the pasuk, Batzar lecha umitzaucha kol advarim ha'eleh, b'achrita yamim, v'shavta Hashem lokecha v'shamata bekolo. You will return to your God. Ki el rachum Hashem lokecha, Hashem is merciful, lo yarpecha v'lo yashchisecha, v'lo yishkach es bris avosecha. Says Menashe, harei koreo so. I'm going to call out to Hashem. Im oneosi mutav. If he answers me, good. The imlava kolap yeshavin. So then, if not, then all of these gods are the same. Vayu maloche asharis mistamim et achalonot. The angels were closing the windows. Shalotalat filoso shemanash lefnei Kodesh Baruch Hu. That the tefillah of Menashe should not go to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Vayu maloche asharis orim lefnei Kodesh Baruch Hu. Ribono shaloylam. Adam she'ovid avodah zarah. A man that worshipped avodah zarah. Ve'em yitzelem behechal. And put an idol into the Heichal. Atame kablo b'tshuva? So Hashem answered, Amar lahen, im einem makablo b'tshuva areni noel sadavs v'nekol bali tshuva. If I don't accept Menashe, then I close the doors to all bali tshuva. Ma'aseh lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu chater l'chatira mitachas kisei hakavod shelo. He made a tunnel under his throne v'shama tchinaso. I think we discussed this debate of whether he has chelik l'olam in the Gemara. The Mishnah in Menashe says he doesn't, but the Gemara Rabbi Yehuda in Menashe yesh lo chelik l'olam haba. Shenemra vayispalel la vayaser lo. So there's a Tanaitic debate whether he lost his olam haba or didn't. And we using this language of this chatira, this tunnel. In the Hineni Hayoni Mimaz, it says Vatachtor Tachas Kisei HaKavod, that our tefillah should tunnel to the Kisei HaKavod, just like Menashe Melach's tshuva did. And Menashe Melach ruled for 55 years. The first 22 years he was a Rasha, but he did tshuva the last 33 years until he died. That's what it says in Seder Olam. The Radak in the Divrei Yomim says he didn't have that much time as a Baal Tshuva. And we brought the Tiferes Yisrael, who said that if he did tshuva, his tshuva was not complete, and that's perhaps why the Tanoim said he didn't earn Olam Haba. Why wasn't his tshuva complete? It was because of Yira. He was getting tortured, and he said even that if Hashem doesn't answer me, it'll be like all the other things, all the other avodah zarah mixed. The Ramban in the parsha we just read this morning in Shabbos asks, how did Paro get punished? If Hashem hardened Paro's heart, and took away his bechira. So what kind of punishment does Paro get? So because the Ramban explains during the first Makkos he had bechira, and he chose willingly not to send Klal Yisrael. Only when he had Yisurim with the later Makkos, and he couldn't withstand, then he sent them. But that's the same thing as Menashe, doing the tshuva only because of pain and suffering. He couldn't stand it by being tortured by the Goyim, so he had no other choice. But otherwise, it's not considered a tshuva shlema. And as Barbara said, even though he did tshuva, and there is evidence that he was accepted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we say that the sins of Menashe led to the Churban. And if the tshuva was accepted, why did they have such a severe punishment? Because, like the Am, like Barbara said, didn't do tshuva, and they continued to do the abominations. It says, the Gemara says in Avos, Kol hamachtias harabim ein maspikin biyod la'aseh tshuva. If you're a person who just doesn't just sin yourself, but you cause others to sin, really the doors of tshuva are closed to you. So how could we say that our Kodesh Baruch Hu accepted his tshuva? He was a choyte umachti. So we already learned this by Yerovam ben Nevat, the first Melech Yisrael, who was also a choyte umachti. So according to the Tana that says, that means Hashem doesn't help us do tshuva. Person can do tshuva by himself without help. And the Malbim points out that even though Menashe may have done tshuva, it didn't prevent the Churban from occurring, because he didn't cause the people to do tshuva either. Oh, this is the Gemara I wanted to learn tonight. Sanhedrin Kuf Beis Omid Beis. Rav Ashi Uki Ashloisha Malachim. Amar Lamocher Niftach Bechavrin. We're going to darshan with the Talmidei Chachamim of the previous generation that were Talmidei Chachamim, but they have no chelek lo'olam haba. So also Menashe is Chazi lebechalme. Menashe, Rav Ashi, is the final Amora, who was the final editor of Talmud Bavli. So Menashe appeared to him in a dream. And Rav Ashi had used the words Niftach bechavrein. Let's with our chaverim. So the Gemara says that Menashe appeared to Rav Ashi in a dream, and says, "You think you can be our chaverim?" So Menashe asked Rav Ashi a question: Mehecha bois lemishra moitzi. When you make a motzi on a piece of bread, where do you cut the bread? So Rav Ashi said, "Armele lo yadana." I don't know. So Armele mehecha bois lemishra moitzi. You don't know where the place in the bread to cut the bread. The chaverchas kohen, you're calling us that we are part of your chaverim? Armele igmaruli. So Rav Ashi asked Menashe to teach him. And tomorrow in the yeshiva, I will discuss this halach in your name. Where it crusts over, like the on the part of the bread that becomes the hardest crust. So Rav Ashi asked Menashe, you're such a big Talmid Chacham, my time a kapachasila of Avodah Zarah. How did you end up worshiping Avodah Zarah? And here's a famous answer of Menashe. Armelei, ihavis hasam havinakitne b'shipulei glima. If you were there with us, you would have picked up your toga, so you wouldn't trip over it and run after it like anything, because there was a very strong Yitzhar Hara for Avodah Zarah in our time. And we've discussed this before. that it's only when Klal Yisrael came back after 70 years, they built Bayis Sheni, that the Anshe Knesset Gdola abolished the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. But apparently this taiva of Avodah Zarah was so great that this was the cause of Menashe falling. Pasuk Yutes. Ben 22 shana Amon b'malcho. Amon Menashe's son was 22 when he took the reign. Ushtaim shana malch, he only ruled for 2 years. B'shem ima Meshulemes bas Charutz min Yatva, in the name of his mother. Some people speculate that the people were sick of these Rishoim, but eventually there was a conspiracy and they got rid of him after 2 years. Vayasa Rabbi Hashem Kasher Asaman Ashaviv, he was a Rasha like his father, even though L'chora, the father had done tshuva and he was born after that. But so he didn't see his father when he was evil. But the hashpah of Menashe was with the people already. So he became influenced by the people. He followed in the path of his father, and he worshipped the idols that his father worshipped. And he abandoned the way of Hashem. The Gemara says Ammon was worse than Menashe. Sanhedrin Kuf Beis Amid Beis. Menashe had mido behechel, that Menashe had placed an idol to the Asherah into the Beis Hamikdash, but into the Heichal, which is the building outside of the Kodesh Kodoshim. Ammon ichnisu lebeis Kodesh Kodoshim. Ammon moved the idol directly into the Kodesh Kodoshim. It says in the Gemara there that Menashe, Kedar as Koros, he removed all of the names of Hashem from his Sefer Torah, V'horas HaMizbech, and destroyed the Mizbech. Ammon, Sarafas HaTorah, he burned the Torah. Ve'ala Shma Mitakamin, he put like an Avodah Zarah on top of the Mizbech. And he was Mavatal the Avodah, the daily Avodah that was done, was Mizbatal, was stopped by Ammon, the son of Menashe. It says also in the Gemara, it's hard to say, Menashe Baal Achoisoi. Menashe had relations with his sister. Ammon Baal Imo. Ammon had relations with his mother. And Amrlo Imo Klum Yesh L'cha Nami Mokum Shiyatzas Bimenu. This is the place that you were born. He did it all to anger Hashem. So this is how far low they went. There was a rebellion against him. He was killed in the palace. Some say it was Yiras Shamayim. They wanted to get rid of these Averas that Ammon and Menashe did. And they wanted Ammon already had a son, Yoshiyahu, and they wanted Yoshiyahu to get a good start. So these people who were rebellious, who didn't want evil ruling them, they got rid of Ammon and they put Yoshiyahu. He was only 8 years old, but he was seen already as a tzaddik, and that's what the people wanted. Others say that the people know they hadn't done tshuva, so they wanted the evil of Ammon, and therefore maybe the Am killed the people who killed them. The Am killed those people, and maybe the Abarbanel says maybe they thought Yoshiyahu would continue in the bad practice of his father. Pasuk Chafei. The Yeser Divrei Amon Asher Asalu Im Ksuvim Al Sefer Divrei Amon Malchei Yehuda. We don't get any more details. Vayikbor Sobik for Asobigan Uza Vayimloch Yoshio B'no Tachtav. His son Yoshio rules. And we start Perichav Beis.
Bernie, can I add some interesting comments that I see in
Please.
the Amloes?
Please.
Ammon's reign came to a speedy end because he failed to live up to the standards of God. He also died after only 2 years, just as 3 kings in Malchus Yisrael did the same thing. Of the kings of Malchus Yisrael, who were descendants of Yeravam, Basa, and Achav, each reigned for only 2 years. They were the most wicked of kings and lacked any merit to protect them. Now Ammon, Melech Yehuda, suffered the same fate. Because if in the Torah in Devarim, God promises the kings of Israel long lives if they would be loyal to the Torah. So obviously they all violated that promise or condition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had made, and therefore they each lasted only 2 years, very brief time. But then he said, then there's a comment from the Abarbanel regarding Ammon. They avenged his death and crowned his son Yoshiyahu in his place, expecting that being only a boy, he would be easily drawn to their side. Obviously talking about those who were not faithful to God. To their surprise and no doubt to their disappointment, he became the most righteous of kings of the Jewish people. Then there's a final comment that I just want to read that's interesting, that based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Daled, I think of it, Aleph. In spite of his wickedness, Ammon is not included among the list of kings who were denied a portion in Olam Haba. He was protected by the righteousness of his son Yoshiyahu. Menashe, on the other hand, was not saved by the righteousness of Chizkiyahu. The righteousness of a son is a merit to his father, but the righteousness of a father is not a credit to his sons unless they follow in his way.
That's
so interesting that the yichus of your child serves you
much
in good
stronger.
stead. Yeah.
Right. As opposed to having a tzaddik as a father.
Yeah.
But where did he learn to be a tzaddik if his father was a lowlife?
So because you see, there's this debate about who killed Ammon. Was it righteous people who killed them? It looks like it was, and then because they wanted to get rid of that. The Abarbanel learns a little differently because they thought by killing him maybe they'll have Yoshio in the son that they could rule over. But there were still tzaddikim and people who followed God around. So somehow Yoshio HaMelech was influenced by them.
He must have had an education there from those.
For what, an 8-year-old?
Yeah, but so we see a lot of things happened a lot earlier. People were married at much younger ages. So he was influenced already to the good.
Younger than 8.
Say it again.
And you wouldn't be married younger than 8.
Okay.
So what does Chus Avos mean?
You're saying what
What
Bernie
did you
It's a
said.
contradiction to
It's a
most
reverse.
laws.
You would think the father would be.
Yeah.
You always think of the father providing merit to the child.
It says Chut Avot.
Right, but it didn't save Menashe. The proof is Chizkiah Melech was Menashe's father.
Yeah.
Yet Ammon is not one of the ones that loses Olam Haba because his son saved him. So that's the raya that they bring, that at least in a direct son-father relationship, when we talk about Zchus Avos, we talk about Zchus of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, our forefathers, the founders of the Jewish people. Then that's called Zchus Avos. But in this direct relationship, maybe works differently.
Maybe by Malchus. Maybe it's a special condition by Malchus.
Or by Malchus, it could be that it's different.
Ernie, wouldn't Zchut Avot not just be the Avot, but a father or an ancestor, and
Right.
and in his merit, I mean, one would benefit.
we go and daven at the kavorim of our ancestors because
Exactly.
we want them to be a melitz yosher for us.
Exactly. We always talk about a Melech Yosher.
If it's Chus,
Huh?
if it's Chus or Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, it's everybody is under this umbrella.
Right. So, but we should know that many of the Meforshim say that Thomas Chusovis, when the Beis Hamikdash Harishon was destroyed, then that Chusovis based on Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in a certain way was gone from us, because the Meforshim say each one represented a battle against one of the Gimel cardinal Averis. Shrichas Damim Gilu Yarois Navodah Zarah. Each one, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, I won't go through how they explain each one had that koyach. And during Bayis Rishon, the people violated all of those Gimel Averis. The schus avos is the schus that the base of Migdash Harishon stood. Once Thomas schus avos, once that went away, the Bayis couldn't stand. So how, on what schus did Bayit Sheni get built? The Maharal says Knesset Yisrael. It had to do, it began with Esther Hamalka when she said, Lech Kenosis Kol HaYehudim. When there was the Tsar of Haman, she said everyone has to gather in a base Knesset and daven. And this began the era of what's called Knesset Yisrael. And Bayis Sheni was built with that schus. So what destroyed Bayis Sheni? Sinas Chinam. Hatred between Jews. Prushim neged Stukim. The Essenes, all the sectarianisms, the Biryonim against Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. We had a civil war. So since the whole thing that kept Bayis Sheni alive was Knesset Yisrael, when you got rid of Knesset Yisrael, because there's pirud, there's hatred among them, the Bayis couldn't stand. I say all of this because the Meforshim tell us Thomas Chus Avos. In a certain way, this Avos of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov doesn't remain. Now, every 3 times a day when we say Shmona Esrei, we say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. So we still invoke their names when we daven. So we cannot say that the Schus Avos is completely gone, but in a certain respect, it has changed. Okay. So, Perek Chav Beis. Ben Shmona Shana Yoshia b'Malcho. Yoshua Melech was 8 years old when he came to power. Ushloshim v'achat shana malach b'Yerushalayim. He ruled 31 years. B'shem imo Yedida bat Adyam miBatzkat. A previous king, Yoash, ruled when he was 7. At that time, though, Yehoyada HaKohen was like the executor. But here, it was a greater risk because Yoshua ruled by himself. First, he had to rule of how to be a king, and he had to insulate or immunize himself because, as Barbara pointed out, the people, the Am Haaretz, wanted to go back to the ways of Menashe and Amnon. So that shows us the power of Yoshua Melech. Now, many years before, which we mentioned when we learned Melachim Aleph, Perek Yud Gimel, we talked about Ido Hanavi. And he said, Ko Amar Hashem, Hinei ven nolad lebeis David, Yoshiyahu shmo. There will be a son born to the house of David, Yoshiyahu. He will destroy the priests of the Avodah Zarah. He'll burn their bones. So he already prophesied that Yoshua was going to destroy the Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara in Brachos, in Yerushalmi, Yoshua yachad midalid shenikru bishmam kodim shenoldu. There are 4 people in Tanakh that their name were mentioned before they were born. Dalid nikru ad shelo noldu. Says Yerushalmi Brachos, Aleph Omid Beis. 4 people, their names were called out before they were born. Yitzchak, Yishmael, Yoshiyahu, and Shlomo. Yitzchak, when the Malachim came to Avram and Sarah, it says, V'karata Shmo Yitzchak. You'll call him Yitzchak. Yishmael, it says also, V'karata Shmo Yishmael. When the Malach told Hagar that she's going to have a child. Yoshiyahu Kar Hashem, when Ido Hanavi prophesies, Hinei ven nolad lebeis David, Yoshiyahu Shmo. Shlomo, it says in Divrei Yomim that David HaMelech was said, Ki Shlomo yiyeh shemo. Pasuk Beis. Vayasa Yashar b'nei Hashem. Yoshiyahu was Yosher. Vayelech kol derech David aviv, v'lo sarya b'nispo. He followed in the path of David. He didn't veer right or left. Says the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos Nun Vav Amud Beis. Amr Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Amr Rav Yonason. Kol Omer Yoshiyahu chata. Later on, the pasuk is going to describe him that there was no king that was about tshuva as great as Yoshiyahu. But the Gemara says, whoever says that Yoshiyahu really sinned, Eino ela toeh. He's mistaken. Shneimar vayasa Yashar b'nei Hashem vayelech kol derech David. So then what does it mean in Perek Chav Gimel when it says, V'chamo lo haya lefanav melech asher shav el Hashem b'chol levavo v'chol nafsho? There was never a king that did tshuva to Hashem with all his heart, because shekol din shedon mi ben shmona. So he already was sitting on the throne at age 8. And he therefore adjudicated cases from until he was 8 at Shmona Esrei. At the 18th year of his life, the Kohen Gadol found a Sefer Torah that had never been found before. At that time, Yoshua Melech studied the Torah and its dinim and the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and he understood that he had made mistakes in din. So Echzirin Lahem, he had made mistakes and it said, Reuven owes Shimon money, but really he didn't. So he had made Reuven pay Shimon. So Natal Mizeh v'Nasan Lazeh. Talmud Lomer v'chol ma'oido. That's why it says all of his money. Yoshua Melech paid people off if he had made mistake in din. And the Amar Rav in Lecha Gadol b'Balei Tshuva Yosem Yoshua b'Doro. There was never a Baal Tshuva as great as Yoshua Melech in his generation. So there's a debate. Was he a tzaddik always, or was he a Baal Tshuva? So this pasuk, where it seems that Rav holds that Yoshua was a Baal Tshuva, when it says Vayelech b'chol derech David aviv, ma aviv, David HaMelech chata v'shav b'tshuva. David HaMelech also sinned and became a Baal Tshuva. Yoshiyahu came chata v'shav b'tshuva. So that's Rav who says he was a Baal Tshuva. But Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani said Vayasa Yashar Tamid. He was machmir on himself that these dinim, that even though a judge who makes a mistake doesn't have to pay, he paid anyways. There, the Chazal also say whoever says about David that he sinned is a toyeh. Remember, because David really divorced. He caused Uriah to divorce his wife. He didn't sleep with the nation Ish, as we learned. Now, if Rav says he was a Baal Tshuva, what does it mean? Vayasa Yashar b'nei Hashem, which implies that he didn't sin. So the Musar HaNevi'im, one of the Meforshim we use often, has a very interesting shot. It says in the Torah, V'asita yashar v'hatov b'nei Hashem. You shall do yashar and tov, which implies that the midah of yashrus is not enough. You need yashrus and tov. So what does that mean? Yashar means you're going according to strict din. The din says this is how you do it. Tov goes lifni mishuras hadin. What is a chassid? A chassid is somebody who goes lifnei mish. He goes beyond the law. He does things that you don't really have to do, but he does them anyways. And therefore, could be Yeshayahu initially was just a Yashar. He followed din. Based on that, he was called a Choteh, to the point that we had to do tshuva. Why it says in Baba Metzia, Daf Lamed Amud Beis, Lo Charva Yushalayim El Mishum Shemidu Dinem Al Din Torah. To this extent, Jerusalem was destroyed because Beis Din was doing din, strict din. They weren't going lifnei mishras din. So eventually, when Yeshua became a Baal Tshuva by doing lifnei mishras din. The Kilas Yaakov says that when it says Yeshua did everything that his father David did, he did like what David did in Shmuel Beis. It says, "Vayi David osem mishpat utzedakah l'chol amo." David did justice and charity. How does the Gemara explain? Sanhedrin Vav on the base. Zika sazakai v'chayev v'sachayev. Somebody who's innocent, he declared innocent. Somebody was guilty, was guilty. Uchesherosh neschayev ani. Now let's say there was a poor person, and he was midin chayev to pay. David nasan lo mitoch beiso. David would give the oni money to pay. That's the mishpat. He made the money get returned to whoever needed it according to the din. But the tzedakah was he gave the ani under the table so he didn't lose money. So, and that which we said, that the judgments that Yoshio did between 8 and 18, where he also returned money, he did like his forefather David. Now, a few of you asked, how could Menashe do all of this? Who did he learn from? So he saw from even his grandparents certain normal practices, good practices, and he learned from them, even from his father. Menashe is his grandfather, Amon is his father. He learned from both of them. But he, I guess from nature, rejected all the terrible abominations they were doing. And therefore he looked for maybe teachers that were going to teach him the righteous halacha of David HaMelech. So those that say he had to be a Baal Tshuva because he was influenced a little bit from his father and grandfather. And that's why maybe initially we didn't really act completely like a tzaddik. This is just to explain the sheet of Rab that says he's a Baal Tshuva and the sheet of Rav Nachman that said he was a tzaddik from right away. Now, here we don't see Yirmiyahu Navi, the author of Melachim, tell us what else did Yoshua Melech do until he was 18 years old. But in Divrei Yomim, we're given a whole story. It says, Heichel lidrosh lelohei David aviv. That when he was 8 years, he started learning and seeking after the proper way of acting like his father David. When he was 12, he began to purify Judea and Jerusalem from the Bamos and the Asherim. He had the Bamos destroyed and broke them up. He ground them into dust, and he threw the dust on the graves of those that used to worship it. And he burnt the Kohanim of the priests of the Avodah Zarah. After they died, he burnt their bones on their mizbechos. Vayitaher et Yudah vet Yushalayim. And he purified Judea and Jerusalem. So from the beginning of his reign, he begins to remove all the toevos, the abominations, the avodah zarah from Yerushalayim, and not only that, even from the areas of the 10 tribes where some people remained. Pasuk Gimel. Vahi b'shmones reishana lemelech Yoshio, shalach hamelech et Shaphan ben Atzalyahu ben Meshulam HaSofer beis Hashem limo. Yoshio HaMelech, when he's 18, sends Shaphan, who is a scribe, and he sends him to the Beis HaMikdash. This 18th year is the year 3303, which is the beginning of Yovel. Rashi tells us this in Masechta Erchim. And the Yalkut Shimoni explains, Os Roshana Berek Habayis. They did a remodeling of the Beis HaMikdash. Harei Reish Yud Chet Shonim Mishabot Kuyoash Ad Shabbat Kuyoshio. There were 218 years from when the last time Yoash HaMelech did remodeling until now Yoash HaMelech. Until Yoshua HaMelech. The Beis HaMikdash was finished in the year 2935. Yoash HaMelech remodeled it in the year 3084. And Yoshua HaMelech remodeled it in the year 3303. 218 years between the Berek Habayis. And what did Yoshua HaMelech tell Shaphan? Aleil Chilkiyahu HaKohen HaGadol. Go to the Kohen Gadol. V'yatein et HaKesef. That means finish collecting the money. Hamuva Beis Hashem. Asher asfu shemrei asaf me'etam. That the people are gathering from the people who are donating money to the Beis HaMikdash. These are the treasurers, the Leviim who gathered the money. Vayitnu al yedei osei hamlacha. Yoshua HaMelech tells Shaphan that now is the time to give the money to the builders, the contractors. Al yedei osei hamlacha mufkadim b'veit Hashem. Vayitnu oto la'osei hamlacha sheb'veit Hashem l'chazek berek habayis. Give it to them because we have to remodel. They're called Chazal Adraklin. Maybe they were like engineers. And the engineers or the planners should give it directly to the builders, the ones who are actually going to do the building. Let's see who those are. Pasuk Vav. Lecheroshim. This is like a carpenter. Those that cut wood, but they do it in a nice way. Velabonim. These are framers who take the wood and build walls with it. Vilagodrim. Godrim are like bricklayers, or they build walls using stones. Viliknot eitzim va'abnei machzev, and to buy lumber and stones. A machzev is a quarry, a place where they, mine stones like granite. Lechazek es habayis. Ach lo yichashev itam hakesav hanitan al yadam ki ve'emunah hem osim. You don't have to do a calculation about the money because they've been chosen. They're very honest, and they were chosen. We don't have to suspect them that the count of the money is not correct. Now, the reason is because they're a group of them. By a single gabbai, you have to give a cheshbon. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, Elef Kudei Mishkan Mishkan Eidus. Remember, we get a whole accounting for Moshe because Moshe was a gabbai yechidi. But when you have a group, then each one sort of keeps each other honest. So this is the message that Yoshua HaMelech sends via Shaphan. So Vayomer Chilkiyahu HaKohen HaGadol al Shaphan HaSofer. So Chilkiyahu the Kohen Gadol tells Shaphan, you know what? Sefer HaTorah matzas b'veis Hashem. I found the Sefer Torah in the treasure house of the Hashem. Vayitein Chilkiyahu et Sefer el Shaphan vayikra'ehu. Chilkiyahu gave the Sefer to Shaphan, and Shaphan read it. In Divrei Yomim, it says, as they were removing the money that were in the treasure, that's when Chilkiyahu found the Sefer Torah. That was written, it says there in Divrei Yomim, et Sefer Torah Hashem biyad Moshe. And Rashi over there comments, it was Mishnah Torah, it's Sefer Dvorim. And it was Mamish the Sefer that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. It says in Medrash Rabbah, Dvorim Rabbah, Parshas Vayelech, Rav Yanai, Moshe Kosav Yud Gimel Torahs. Moshe Rabbeinu himself wrote 13 Torahs. Yud Beis Yud Beis Shvatim. He gave each Shevet a Sefer Torah. The Achas Hiniach Ba'aron. One he left in the Aron. L'chora, the Aron HaKodesh. Shem Yivakesh L'zayev Dover Sheyu Moitzimo Sam Shabaron. It was like an index Sefer Torah. That if there were questions later on by Soifrim, what is the original, how is it like, they could check the Sefer Torah. Now, the Radak here brings Chazal, Sanhedrin Kuf Gimel Amid Beis, that Achaz Hamelech burnt the Torah. And he didn't let them to study Torah. So the Kohanim itminu mipon of Sefer Torah echad shel Kodesh HaKadoshim. That the Kohanim hid one Sefer Torah in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, vitminu tachas hanidbach, and they hid it. Kidei shehu lo yavadu so. They were concerned that Achaz was going to burn every Sefer Torah. Va'achshav matzah Chilkiyahu Sefer Torah. And this is the Sefer Torah that now Chilkiyahu found. Now, what was special here? HaSefer Hayam Megulal b'Parshas HaTochacha. When they opened up the Sefer, they found that it had been rolled to a specific pasuk. Yolech Hashem oscha ves malkecha asher takim alecha. That this is part of the curses, that Hashem is going to take you and its king into Golus. So, this is what Chilkiyahu shows Shaphan, that we found that this pasuk is right at the beginning of the daf, that this is going to be a very frightening thing to the people and to the king when they see this.
Incentive to do tshuva.
On the other hand, it's an incentive to do tshuva. Now, the Sefer HaIkorim says something else. He says like this: HaTorah shebiyadeinu hayom lefi meshach haKabbalah ma'avos bonim hi shnas leMoshe b'Sinai b'li shinui klal. The Sefer HaIkorim, who was a Rishon who wrote in the year, 1200, 1300, 1400, he says the Torahs that we have a Masorah, father to son, that this is the same Torah that was given to Moshe at Har Sinai. And he explains, V'zeh, ki b'zman bayit Rishon, shahayu HaKohanim u'morei HaTorah b'beis HaMikdash. Where were the rabbis and the teachers? They were in the Beis HaMikdash, because that's where the Sanhedrin was. The HaTorah mefursemes b'fi hakol. Everybody knew the Torah. You couldn't change a word. So even though we have all these kings, Menashe, Ammon, bad people, along with these kings, we never went through a period of time where we didn't have the great Nevi'im. Yirmiyah Navi, Ido Navi, all these Nevi'im, Hulda Navi'ah, and Mazirin Yisrael al Shmiras HaTorah. We should understand that even though, yes, there were Jews who were following Menashe and Ammon and doing evil, there were many Jews who were listening to the Nevi'im on Shmiras HaTorah. Umasha Matzinu, says the Sefer HaIkorim, Shibi Yoshio, Shecharad Charadag Dolal Sefer HaTorah, Shmatzach L'Kiyah Kohen Beis Hashem, that he was frightened because they found this pasuk. Lo Shalo Hayanim Tzab Yadam Sefer Torah. It's not that they didn't have a Sefer Torah before, or Parchek and Ksavadas. Sharei Yirmiyah Navi Ayakan. Yirmiyah Navi was alive. Elafisha Amonu Menashe Yovdei Avodah Zarah. Umachisin et Hashem. They knew that his grandfather and father were doing things lahachis. Until the point, remember we said he cut out all the names of Hashem. The Kotev Sham Avodah Zarah Tachtem, he wrote the name of Avodah Zarah in the place of the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Leficha Chashash Echad Min HaKohanim Shem Yavo Liyad HaMelech Sefer HaTorah Shekatav Moshe She'egdar Zos Kor Shebo. So the Kohanim were concerned about, especially these Sefer Torah that were written by Moshe Rabbeinu, that Menashe HaMelech would get it and take out the Yud Kei Vav Keis. Ubavir Zer Gonzu Bein Shuros Habayis. So they hid the Torah within like the foundations of the house, and that the fear was that when they opened up this Torah, it was at the Parshas Tochacha. The Alshich says this was not the Sefer Torah of Moshe; it was another Sefer. But so there's a machlokes whether it was or wasn't, but we certainly have a Masorah that it was. The Radak gives another explanation. Why was there such excitement that they found the Sefer Torah? Because people had forgotten the Torah, and about all the various bad things that would happen to Klal Yisrael if they did bad things. The Radak in this pshat seems to imply that the people didn't have Sefer Torah, or at least among the Bnei Yisrael they didn't have it. And they forgot mitzvahs of the Torah. And now that they read Sefer Dvarim, all the bad things that would happen to them. Now, it's pretty hard. Remember, Menashe, who was Menashe's father? Chizkiah Melech. There were a lot of Sefer Torah there. Remember, what does it say in Sanhedrin Tzadik Daled? Noatz cherv al Pesach beis hamidrash v'amar kol mi she'eino oisik b'Torah yidke b'cherv zeh. Chizkiah Melech put a sword in the door of every base medrash and said, whoever doesn't study the Torah will be run through with this sword. Batku midan vad Beersheva v'lo matzu ha'aretz. They did bechinos from Dan vad Beersheva, from the north to the south. They found everybody Tamil Chachamim. Migvas vad Antipatris v'lo matzu tinik v'tinoikis ish v'isha shlo hayu bekin be'ilchos tumah v'tahara. Men, women, children, they were experts in tumah v'tahara. But then, of course, Menashe Melech ruled for 55 years. And in that time, Radak says, Nitztachka Torah Yisrael. But then, they forgot Torah. But then, the Radak asks, what about Menashe doing tshuva? It's only at his end of his days. There was not enough time to return the Am to be Chozer b'tshuva. Now, the Rashba asks a lot of kashas on this Radak. Because it seems like they were in wonderment when they found the Sefer Torah, as if they didn't know anything about the Torah before. That they had to do mitzvahs, and that they were warned if they didn't do mitzvahs, there's culpability. Remember, the Torah already says when he was 8 years old, he went to be doiresh l'Elokei David, and he began to be mitar things. So he's obviously knows that these things are prohibited. Otherwise, he wouldn't have destroyed it. If he didn't have a Sefer Torah, how did he know all these things? And there were Nevi'im who remained true to the Torah. How could it be that they didn't have a Sefer Torah? And apparently, since the 8 years old, when he started becoming Baal Tshuva, the Nevi'im became stronger. And they started teaching the people more. And you're going to say that this Sefer Torah was not found until it was 18? And this 10 years, when there was a Baal Tshuva movement going, they didn't have a Sefer Torah? So the Rashba says, Ein has-seichel mekablo klal. The Rashba doesn't accept it. And therefore, the Rashba says the big astoundment of this finding the Sefer Torah, that it was a bad siman. And when they opened up the siman and they found it, that it was, because normally a Sefer Torah is in the beginning. But here they found it rolled to the Tochacha. And especially the pasuk that says that they and their kings are going to be taken into Galus.
The Metzudas David has a comment that says that why didn't Yoshio tear Korea after realizing this was at the Tochacha, and it was obviously a simon that the Jewish people had sinned so terribly. So he said, it's not a state of mourning. It's rather an expression of grief and fear of the punishment that had been decreed against them. So apparently, we know that Yoshia was the last melech. So obviously, he was destined. This was the beginning of the end.
No, he's not the last. He's not the last. Zechariah, Tzidkiyahu is the last. Yoshia is one of the last tzaddikim, but there's more kings to come. Tzidkiyahu HaMelech is the one who's taken into exile by Nebuchadnezzar.
My mistake. Sorry.
But you're right. The Metzudas David says that we're going to see that Yoshua HaMelech tore his clothing, and because he saw a Simon Ra that there was going to be a punishment coming, and that the Malbim explains normally Sforim were, if you opened up the Sefer, it was at the beginning, but this was the Tochacha is almost at the end of the Sefer. Now, we know, despite the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, the Gemara in Yuma, Nun Beis Amud Beis says, Umi Gonzo Ha'aron, Yoshio Gonzo. Means, we believe that the many years before the Churban, at the time of Yoshua Melech, he buried the Aron HaKodesh. Ma Rosh Gonzu. What did he see that he buried it? Rosh HaKosav Yolech Hashem Oschaves Malkach Asher Tekim Alecha. That the nations are going to take away you and the kings. And he thought, if that's going to happen, the Aron HaKodesh is going to be taken to Bavel too. Omad v'gonzu. That's why it says in Divrei Yomim, Perek Lamed Vayomer Lal V'im, HaMevinim L'cho Yisrael Kadoshim, Tnu es Aron HaKodesh B'bayis Asher Bana Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. He told Leviim to take the Aron into the Beis HaMikdash, and there they buried it. Okay, we will. This is the beginning of this story. Just the beginning. We read, on Pesach we read the Haftarah of Yoshua Melech, because we're going to see once they found the Sefer Torah, they did a great Korban Pesach. L'chora, it sounds like they hadn't done it for a while. We'll go into that in depth as we continue learning the sugya. But this is a very important historical story about Yoshua Melech, and we'll continue, God willing, next week. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Shavua Tov, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
You.